All right, so you want to vacuum the pool. Here's what you do. First things first, you're going to locate a couple of things, namely the vacuum hose, that's this big spool. You're also going to want to find the long tube looking thing that has this guy attached on the end. This is the vacuum itself, and this is what the tube connects to. You can go ahead and get everything connected. Basically what you're going to want to do is grab one end of the blue/blue-green tube and literally stick it on the end of the vacuum. Push pretty hard because it likes to come off, and if it comes off, that can cause some problems I'll get into a little bit later. The other end of the tube, you might have to dig around to find because it's going to be connected. So let's unspool this. So here's the other end of the tube. This is going to connect to this circular piece right here. You're going to want to take the longer end and put it on the end of the tube here. This is the end that's going to connect to one of the pool skimmers. So this end right here will go to one of the pool skimmers, and I'll show you how that works here next. First things first, remove the skimmer lid. This prevents kids from breaking their ankles. I like to, before I put anything together, clean this skimmer out. You'll notice there's a bunch of junk in here. So we'll go over to the garbage can and empty it. All right, so I'm at the garbage can and I'm emptying this skimmer out, getting all the big pieces out. If there's a couple of little pieces here or there, it's okay, but the cleaner you get this, the better the vacuuming process is gonna go. So let's bring this back over to the skimmer hole. And now that we're at the skimmer hole, I can literally just drop this thing back in. You might need to wiggle it around, and you wanna try to get this seated nice and flush, just like it was when you pulled it out. The next process is to fill this line up with water as much as possible. I'll get into the reasoning for this here in a little bit, but the best way to fill this line up is to go into the chemical storage room, grab this hose, bring one end, it doesn't matter which end, of the blue hose to that hose, and then using the hose, literally fill up this hose with water. So this guy works in a unique way. There's a little nozzle right here. You open the valve by pushing it towards the cinder block wall. This now turns this hose on. As you can see, it's on, and ultimately you're gonna wanna fill it up. I'm gonna need two hands to put this back on. Now this is reconnected, you're gonna wanna pay attention to the far end and notice when water starts coming out of the vacuum. So you see how there's water coming out of the vacuum here? It's gonna be kind of hard to see. It's flowing out of the vacuum end, meaning water has gone all the way through this line and has completely filled it up. And now I can take the hose out, and this thing is totally full. And I'll lay that down for now. I'll go back in and I'll shut the valve back off. So now this hose is shut off. We can put this away. Let's put this away. And now that's put away. Again, double check to make sure this valve is totally shut off. And we'll head back over to this blue line here. Now here's the situation. This is very important to get this right. You want to make sure the vacuum end goes into the pool before you connect the circle end to the skimmer. And you want to also try to get the vacuum end into the pool and the circle end connected to the skimmer in pretty quick succession. You don't want to wait around too long, because once this vacuum end goes into the pool, the water will start running out of the line into the pool because that end is at a lower altitude than this end over here. And we want to minimize that because we want to, for the pump's sake, to prevent cavitation in the pump room, we want to make sure that this line is as full as water as possible. I really can't stress this enough. We have to make sure that that line is full of water as much as possible. The pump can handle momentary cavitation, like for a second or two, but it's not good to have that line sucking in air for like minutes on end. So you want to make sure this process happens quickly, relatively quickly, within reason. Obviously be deliberate with your actions and be careful, but we want this to happen kind of fast. So we're gonna do this kind of quickly, and I'll walk you through the process. In order to prevent the vacuum from pulling any air through into the pump, we're gonna make sure this end goes into the water. And this is the part that we're gonna do in quick succession. So let's do this fast. So first things first, I grab the vacuum. I keep the vacuum roughly at the same altitude as the circle end, and I push the vacuum into the water. I make sure the vacuum stays in the water because once we connect the circle end, we need to make sure that this vacuum is constantly pulling water through the line and never air. As we grab the circle end, we bring it over, keeping it kind of low, and we connect it very nice and flush until it seats into the skimmer. And you should have a nice, good connection. Again, double check to make sure the vacuum has stayed in the water. If the vacuum starts to come out of the water, like it sometimes wants to do if you're not careful, then the pump will start pulling air and that damages the pump. So you wanna make sure this stays in the water. Even if this entire handle goes in the water, that's okay. But whenever we have this connected, this vacuum must stay in the water. It has to, that is essential. Otherwise you'll risk damaging the pump in the pump room. So just to reiterate, in case it wasn't crystal clear, anytime the circle end of the vacuum hose is connected to a skimmer, you have to make sure the vacuum end, the other end of the hose, is completely submerged underwater. As long as you do that, you're safe. But if you pull the vacuum out of the water and the circle end is connected to the skimmer, that means the pump's gonna start sucking air, which damages the pump. That's a problem. You wanna avoid that. Keep the vacuum end underwater at all times. What I like to do is extend this arm to be as long as possible so that I can reach as far into the pool as possible. And that way I don't have to physically move around the pool as much. Now you can do it with a nice short arm like this, but you might have to get in the pool to reach the middle portions. So to extend the arm, I crank this open, I twist it, and this will give me the ability to slide this tube out. And I like to make it as long as possible until you see the marker that says that there's about 16 inches left. And you'll see that right about here. And I like to kind of lock it off so that it doesn't totally pull itself out of the pole. And then I tighten it back up again. You're gonna wanna use 2 hands to tighten it. And that way, whenever you push, it doesn't slide around. And at this point in time, you are now vacuuming the pool. Now, there's some technique to it that I'm not gonna get into this video, but you wanna make sure as you vacuum the pool that the head stays in the pool at all times. You can never let the head come out, because again, if you let the head come out, then this starts sucking air, which goes into the pump room, which damages the pump through a process called cavitation, which once again, I'm not gonna get into in this video. So again, as we go around the pool, we're gonna wanna focus on getting all the dirty spots first. As we get the dirty spots, we can then work on the less dirty spots, and ultimately, this process might take a good half hour, 45 minutes, and if the pool's particularly dirty, it might take 2-3 hours. So allocate some time for this whenever you open. I like to focus on the middle of the pool and then work my way out to the edges, and eventually you're gonna walk all the way around the perimeter of the pool, getting to the far end of the slides, and then you'll come all the way around back. Be patient. The more patient you are with this process, the better vacuuming job you'll do. You wanna get everything up that you possibly can. Really try to see through the water. You might need some sunglasses, and identify the dirtiest, cruddiest spots. The vacuum can't pick up everything, but it does a pretty good job, especially if you vacuum properly, of getting all of the like little dirty debris chunks out of the pool. So these next couple of tricks I'm gonna show you, while they're not absolutely necessary when you're trying to vacuum the pool, technically you could just vacuum the pool throughout this entire process like I've shown you so far. What I'm gonna show you here substantially improves the quality of the vacuum, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Right now, the vacuum pump is sharing a lot of the vacuum pressure with a bunch of the other skimmers, and you can very easily shut some of those skimmers off to increase the amount of vacuum suction that comes through that vacuum. Now, this isn't necessary, like I said. In a lot of the problems that we have with vacuuming, they come from improperly doing these procedures. So make sure you're paying attention and doing these exactly as I show you. Otherwise, if you get it wrong, there can be some issues. So the first and probably easiest thing to do is to locate this green bucket, and you're gonna wanna find a couple of plugs, specifically 2 plugs. The bigger the plugs, the better. They look like this, they're black, they're rubbery, and these plug the skimmers, and I'll show you how exactly to do that. So the first skimmer you're gonna wanna plug is over here. It's the furthest from the guard room, and it's pretty easy to plug. All you gotta do is pull this off. The basket, which if it's not clean, you wanna clean, pull it completely out, and at the bottom you'll notice there's a hole. This hole can be plugged easily by grabbing this guy here and literally pushing it into the hole. Now, you won't have to push very hard because the hole has some suction to it, meaning it'll stay down there if you just set it up nicely. Now, you're gonna wanna double check and make sure it's seated properly. If it's all crooked or cattywampus, obviously it's not gonna plug the hole. Now that this is plugged, the pump, it is pulling all of the water through all of the other skimmers, but not this one because it's plugged, which is a good thing because we're trying to increase the vacuum suction from the one over there. So we'll go and plug some of the other ones. I like to put this over on top, leaving the basket out so that some kid doesn't break their ankle. We'll go to the one under the slide next. So the one under the slide is a little bit tricky because you have to unlock this gate. In order to unlock the gate, you type in the code, which is 390. Once you've typed in the code, you can unlock the lock, pull the lock off, and the gate should open. Make sure you put the lock back on and relock this whenever you're done so that kids don't get in between the slides. We'll go under, and I'll show you where this skimmer is. So here is the skimmer under the slide. It's the exact same as all the other skimmers. You'll pull the basket out, making sure you empty anything that's gross in here, like all this hair and leaves and grass. We can do that later. But first, I'll plug this skimmer with the rubber stopper here. And it's the exact same process as the other one. You just have to put it in there. It's kind of hard. You have to reach your arm pretty far down. And because there's suction, it should seat properly, but you want to double check and make sure it's nice and seated so that it's not cattywampus, just like the other one. All right, so of the 6 total skimmers that we have here at the pool, 2 of them are plugged off. 1 of them is being used to vacuum. That leaves 3 more skimmers that still need to be plugged off. Again, you're gonna wanna plug off 5 total skimmers, count them, 5. All 5 skimmers need plugged off, and then the one that you have left is the one that you're vacuuming from, so obviously you don't wanna plug those off. So go do that right now. Go plug off the other 3 skimmers that I did not show you in the video. They're located around the perimeter of the pool, just like the first 2 are, and you're gonna plug them off the exact same way. So you've successfully vacuumed the pool. The pool looks clean. It may have taken you 30, 45 minutes. Heck, it might have taken you 2 hours if the pool is particularly dirty. But now that you're done, you're just gonna undo the process that you just did. And that includes the little plugs if you put 5 of those plugs in. The first thing I like to do, just so I don't forget or get it backwards, is disconnect this end, that's the circle end, from the skimmer that you originally put in at the beginning of the video. This is really important that you get this order right, because as long as this is disconnected, and I mean both the tube and the actual circle attachment are disconnected from the skimmer, that means you can safely disconnect, or I should say unsubmerge, the vacuum end from the pool itself. Again, pull this end off first, and then, only then, can you pull the vacuum out of the pool. When you pull the plugs out, it doesn't really matter what order the plugs in each of the other 5 skimmers come out in, as long as they come out and get put back. That allows for those skimmers to then again function properly. Just don't forget to put the baskets back in after you pull the plugs out. Otherwise, the last thing you're gonna wanna do is make sure this gets rolled back up, put it to the side. I like to store it over here next to the baby pool pump room. We're gonna wanna take the vacuum itself and hang it back up on its hanger. It goes like this. It's hard to do with one hand, so you'll just have to believe me. And then put this up nicely so that it's out of the way and patrons don't trip on it. And just like that, you vacuumed the swimming pool, which is fantastic because now the pool patrons can come in, they get to swim in a clean pool, and you didn't destroy the pump. So that's a win in my books.